Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel doing these solo modes. It's been a pretty long time for me, although I too tend to put these episodes back to back. So, in the updates, there are at least 4 solo modes that I should catch up on. And so today we'll do And the Crowd Goes Wild. We are now past the point of the 2-year anniversary of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and yeah, while they have stayed consistent about adding the occasional solo mode every month or two, they really haven't evolved this concept in any way, and the rewards haven't gotten much better, so solo mode does feel very much like a second, if not third class citizen to ranked play, which is what they mostly have focused on, with the occasional special event. So the Crowd Goes Wild. The UA cards are well known for their unique effects and their ability to switch in and out of the field, let the roars of the spectators reverberate through the crowd as you lead these sports superstars to victory. UA, I'm not sure what that stands for. Ultra something, I imagine. There are several incidences in the several Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes of a focus on turning the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game into some kind of future sport where you're racing while playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or doing something else physical, or at least slightly more exciting than just placing cards down on a duel disc and having holograms summon monsters to fight each other. It definitely feels a little awkward, certainly, particularly when you have an entire anime series that is built on that gameplay concept, which means entire expansions of the card were built on that entire of the card game were built on that expansion concept, and it just feels like it doesn't work well with the target audience there. And this may be very much a Western versus a Japanese thing. It may very well be the case that in Japan, Japanese kids are pushed and forced into several sports clubs and sports activities that almost every Japanese kid would have been involved in some higher level of sports than somebody in the United States might have been. Thus, the idea of doing sports might be more instilled into Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans in Japan. Although, I don't think that's really the case, because sure, kids in Japan may have been forced into sports, but that doesn't inherently mean they enjoyed it or liked it. I think there is probably a significant number of Japanese students who were forced into either sports clubs or did sports festivals, which I know they have at least one of those. But then, as soon as they didn't have to do that, would choose not to do that. And certainly there are video game fans that just want to play video games, or card game fans that just want to play card games in Japan as much as they are in the rest of the world. Looks like we're going to get this trap card. When the opponent declares an attack, your opponent can reveal one monster in their hand to negate that card's effect, otherwise destroy the attacking monster. Then in the battle phase. So this is a pretty terrible card, I would say, because your opponent just has to reveal one monster in your hand. You'd only really want to play this when you were fairly certain your opponent couldn't have a monster in their hand was empty, or you knew what was in their hand. Otherwise, you have a card that has a high chance of failing. So there would have to be some pretty high synergy there. So as far as the animations go, I think they may have even slightly toned down the animations in this. In a world far, far into the future, they have updated this playback system somewhat, so I can put it in auto mode. I can also turn off the user interface. They still never really got rid of these weird dots at the top. This obviously is some kind of tracking watermark, or just really poor, ridiculous filter they have. In a society where the comfort and luxury are only afforded to a few, professional athletes battled it out in hopes of being thrust into the riches overnight. Now, there are several sci-fi stories that work on this general premise, so they're ripping off any number of stories. I would assume they are probably ripping off mostly Alita Battle Angel more than anything, but yeah, the general concept of a Colosseum-like dome and then a rich upper class being entertained by a poor lower class that then is given the chance of rising up in the class system is something that happened in reality, so no surprise there. Now, what I do find a little surprising here is that these people are the UAs, Ultra Athletes. Okay, so we now know what that stands for, who competed in a range of sports. I'm a little surprised here that they're going with all sports, because it definitely feels like you could have just focused on baseball, or, well, this is basketball, and this might be some kind of like future version of dodgeball, and this may be, who knows, some kind of discus shooting, or volleyball even. Now, there is something to be pointed out here in the subtle choice, I suppose you will call it, in that the basketball player is of a darker skin tone than all of the lighter skin tone characters, it seems, although this guy may also be darker skin tone. It's kind of hard to see, which honestly for Japanese that's not too bad. It's like it is fairly realistic that there is a heavy over percentage amount of darker skin toned people who play basketball, and they are celebrated for it. And certainly if the Japanese dare to animate any dark skinned character, it always comes off as being insulting to at least a small group of people who want to be insulted by everything, and sometimes it just literally is insulting. So we won't dive too deep into the racial politics of choosing that character, but noticeably there are, to my knowledge, roughly 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I wouldn't be surprised if there's less than 20 that have a dark skinned character. Now, it is fair to also point out that all the light skinned characters are for the most part being drawn by Japanese people as Japanese people, and that's how they interpret it. Audiences, moving on with the story instead of getting derailed, audiences from all over gathered to witness their dazzling plays, and today was no exception. Some will watch from their TVs, others will witness the athletes play live from up close if they were lucky enough to score themselves a ticket to the UA stadium, immersing themselves into the fervor of the other fans. And tonight the UAs put their bodies on the line yet again for the roaring crowd filling the stadium. There is definitely something that needs to be said about professional sports. Pretty much all professional sports have a uncomfortably high amount of compromises to get to that level to be a professional athlete, and then they have an uncomfortable high amount of compromises as far as how the athletes are treated and taken care of. The sports often are too aggressive and too violent. There often is not a very good pension, if there is a pension at all. So somebody who is an athlete can play for, on average, 3 to 5 years and make tons of money in that 3 to 5 years, but have really no safety nets after that, and they can be very much broke and have spent all of the money they earned. And then part of that a lot of athletes are just not educated properly. They are allowed to cheat. They are fast-tracked through colleges. The fact that colleges have athletic departments in general is very questionable, and honestly, colleges should be legally barred from having athletics and only be places of education. Yeah, there's just a lot of problems that a lot of people are aware of, but don't really have a solution for. Baseball in the United States, if you stay in it long enough, I think has a decent amount of pension, but they all play too many games. They play too aggressively. The aggression and the overexertion and the overexercising and the potential for bodily and mental damage is way too high. It starts way too early at usually the elementary and junior high levels for kids that are then often pushed to stay in these athletics paths for their entire life until they are too old at the age of, say, 40 to play any further. It certainly isn't a healthy thing to have only one hobby or one thing you're thinking about all the time. And generally, I would say for the sports, and this isn't just physical sports, it's also a case for, say, esports, which I would argue aren't really sports. Having more tournament-like events at lower levels and more regionals, effectively, I think would be better for everybody involved. Instead of having one Super Bowl, break it down into, say, 12 Super Bowls, one a month, from 12 different divisions, which hires potentially a lot more amateur style football players and would let more people actually play football. There is this weird split between professional athletics, not just football, but all of them, in that a lot of adults can play basketball, baseball, that they can, and they do for fun, but they can't really cross that wide barrier between a pickup basketball game between friends at, say, a park or at a gym, and even having a local regional basketball league. Maybe hockey is about the closest one that bridges that gap. But yeah, you would never be anywhere close to playing a baseball game as a hobby as an adult and actually being able to enter a regional tournament of some sort. It's National Football League and College Football League, and then it's thousands upon thousands of other people who could play football but wouldn't. And it wouldn't be allowed on a field at all. So if everything just kind of was forced to calm down and cool down, get rid of the idea of $1 million stadiums and big events, so more people could participate, it would be probably better for the sport. And noticeably, as I'm ranting about sports, which I'm a little surprised I even have this much to say about sports, since I generally just ignore them. But increasingly, that is the case for most people, is that more and more people are ignoring professional sports as fewer and fewer people have cable TV with sports packages or TV at all, that they're getting over-the-air signals in those kinds of channels. No streaming service other than Amazon Prime has any sports package that I know of, and Amazon Prime really just has Thursday night football, or Tuesday night football, the lesser watched football games. But yeah, there's been a long decline for decades as far as interest in baseball, because baseball is way too long. Baseball in particular could be cut in half and be just 4.5 innings or 4 innings. There's been some decline of basketball since some of the big name, high celebrity basketball players retired. There's been most recently a major decline in interest in football. And then some sports were never particularly popular, like volleyball. Let's continue the story here. And I'm not even going to get it to the game at this rate. When he's on the mound, no batter will stand a chance against his blazing fastballs and unpredictable eyeballs. Who? I didn't see a name here. Introducing the one, the only UA perfect ace. Born to be a sporting superstar, he weaves down the field with artful dribbling and perfect passing. So I guess this is probably a soccer player. Soccer, never particularly popular in the United States, but extremely popular still around the rest of the world. And soccer in particular is probably a perfect example of what I was trying to say before, in that there is far smaller of a gap between a soccer league and local football clubs with just regular people playing games and kids just playing soccer in an empty field. Soccer really only requires a couple of sticks and a soccer ball. Honestly, you don't even need the sticks. You just need to draw a line to indicate where the soccer goals would be in your imagination, which is why, in part, soccer is so incredibly popular around the world, is it is just a low barrier to entry. Soccer also, noticeably, while a fairly long game when played, not as aggressive as American football, nowhere is high scoring. You score maybe 2 or 3 points in a high scoring game of soccer, whereas you could score 50 to 100 points in an American football game. There's less repeated direct head-on collision, or just collision in general. In soccer, there's a much higher chance that you'll be penalized for colliding with another player in soccer. So high of a chance that is the one major complaint about soccer, is that somebody will be slightly brushed aside and then the player will pretend to be super hurt in the hopes of getting the other player penalized, the other team penalized. So there's a lot of faking of injuries, which nobody likes that either. But soccer is a little bit slower and a little bit less aggressive. I'd only say a little bit, though. I'd argue rugby is probably the most aggressive of the three, American football, soccer. So he is the invincible UA midfielder. So I guess he is a soccer guy. Now we have the American footballer with his eye always on the with his eye always on the opportune time to strike. See, that doesn't feel like a native English speaker would write that sentence. He is the calm and collected commander who always leads his team to victory, which, again, as far as American football, calm and collected is no way any kind of quarterback or leader of a football team would ever be described or act. And they're making all the sports balls glow, which makes it harder to just instantaneously realize what kind of sport they're implying. Give it up for UA Playmaker. And here we have another American football character, I imagine. This heavyweight giant isn't just all muscle, his astonishing dashing speed and ironclad defense will stop any opponent. Nothing can get past UA Blockbacker, which neither one of those I think are actually titles of American football positions. Which, yeah, for a Japanese animator or writer, I imagine they could make that mistake. Notice here too that they're really just using the same animation each time of the lights, and we just have a repeated strobe light, spotlight coming in. It's not strobe light, it's the spotlight on either side, and occasional twinkles. Very simple effects still happening in these solo modes. Using his extraordinarily jumping abilities, he dazzles audiences everywhere with his awesome shooting and aerial plays. Here we have a basketball player of some sort, UA Dreadnought Dunker, which the king of the court. Dreadnought Dunker. I am pretty sure nobody has ever been called the Dreadnought Dunker, because mentioning a class of naval warship as your nickname seems very weird. It seems out of place. And generally, I don't think basketball players, at least in America, have nicknames at all. I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA forbids the use of nicknames or severely restricts it. Each of these athletes have a sport that they specialize in, which inherently implies that none of these athletes should be fighting against each other in this arena. I almost wonder if the Blockbacker character was supposed to be a sumo character and they censored it, westernized it to be a American football character instead, because a sumo wrestler would be big like that and would have a lot of pushing judo abilities. It's frankly shocking there isn't a sumo wrestler being mentioned here, since sumo, I think, is the national sport of Japan and definitely is pretty popular, at least amongst an older audience, perhaps slightly older than anybody who would be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, which is saying something since Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like 25 years old at this point. But if they have the physical abilities and the technical skills to handle it, there's no reasons why they have to only stick to one. Whenever these elites play a game, the night is ablaze by the roars of the crowd. As the citizens of the future world cheer for the superhuman athletes that they see as their heroes. So these scenarios not really getting much better in that they are all set up to some ending of the story that will be not much of anything. From what I've heard, it is pretty common that a real world athlete is typically pretty good at multiple sports. They all exercise about the same and they play different games to stay in shape. So about somebody who is a baseball player is got a decent chance of being good at basketball and football also. Let's see what this practice teaches us. It's going to give us this loner deck, which I don't think there's a real reason to look at the cards, because this is almost certainly going to be really simple gameplay mechanic. But you could pause now and read this if you want to. One of the things that I'm wondering about is if these solo modes are 100% covering cards that have come out recently, or if they aren't kind of dipping back into older expansions that may have come out 10-15 years ago. Because honestly, this doesn't feel like a gimmick that would make a lot of sense in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It would only make a lot of sense if you hadn't made a lot of cards that could like synchro summon, link summon, pendulum summon, or do any kind of special trick that it would have been added later. But we haven't actually played with the cards yet, so maybe there is some trick there. The most prominent feature of UA deck is the ability to return UA monsters from the field to your hand and special summon a different UA monster. Special summoning, pretty basic. Special summoning introduced basically in the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series, alongside polymerization, infusion summoning, so that's a pretty old technique. UA monsters have different levels, attack and defense, and their own distinctive effects, which kind of makes them all just very random and doesn't seem like they would synergize that much. See which one will suit your current circumstances by summoning it to the field. Put on your coach cap and lead these athletes to victory by making the best use of their skills. So I guess that's the general idea with these cards, is that you're acting like a manager or a coach. Use the UA cards in your hand to win the duel during this turn. First, activate UA Stadium. So what's this gonna do? If a UA monster is normally summoned to your field, you can add one UA monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, if a UA monster is special summoned to your side of the field, all monsters you currently control gain 500 attack, even if this card leaves the field, which that seems like a odd extra bit of power for a field spell. Normal summon UA midfielder to activate the effective UA stadium, then add UA player manager to your hand. Return UA midfielder from the field to your hand and special summon UA playmaker. Which noticeably the instructions there were kind of out of order for what I actually had to do. Should have said special summon UA playmaker and select to UA midfield to be returned. When a UA monster is special summoned to your field, you can activate the effective UA stadium and the effective UA play manager from your hand. So 2 effects are going to be activated. Now, what does seem very modern here in this is a case of just doing quite a lot in one turn, and that is still the ever-increasing problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you will play against people who spend minutes upon minutes in one turn just summoning 5 to 10 cards or activating 5 to 10 effects to try to do a 1 or 2 turn kill, instead of what Yu-Gi-Oh! May have been when it was first launched, where you would have just summoned one monster and ended your turn. It is power crept far too much, and they've done only one thing really to limit the power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is to introduce a whole new game called Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush in Japan, which I haven't seen any evidence that it's going to succeed or come to the West. Let's destroy the card on the opponent's field. Okay. That's all it's going to let me do. Proceed to the battle phase and use UA Playmaker to attack. Battle phase. It's not going to have me do anything here with that. And that's still my major issue. I'm declaring an attack with UA Play Manager, the effect of UA Playmaker. Activate the effect of UA Playmaker. Apparently that swaps him attack over, make him stronger. Although I didn't do a good job there at all of really explaining that. Yep. So far it doesn't feel like there's any big trick here. So what would be crazy now is that we now have to play a real deck with a full game, and we'll hope that we don't struggle with that. It's a little surprising, but probably for the better, that there aren't clear conditions. It gives you a 3-star difficulty here, but plenty of other games might have had clear conditions where you would get 1 star for taking no damage, or 1 star for winning in less than 10 turns, or 1 star for doing over 4,000 damage or something like that. If they did add that to these solo modes, then that would give you more opportunities to succeed in some way and move forward, while also giving you reasons to go back and play these solo duels more than once. Which, notably, if I can get a victory, then I will only play these solo duels once with the learner deck, and then once very quickly with my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, which will almost always win. And yeah, 2 years in, having played Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel since its launch, the Zodiac Tri-Brigade has been the only deck I really have played for what feels like at least a year and a half. There was a deck I played before that. And I still haven't earned anywhere near enough crafting points, or decided in any way. Wow, I literally don't think I can do anything here. Just end the turn. I can put this face down. Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! In general has not encouraged me to spend the extra time to try to build a new deck, and even if I was encouraged to try and build a new deck, I wouldn't have enough crafting points to really succeed in it. See, here's a great example of what you typically might have if you can't play a single card in one turn, and it's fairly strange that the AI, the challenger here, would play that strongly. So that's probably not what we want. That might be what we want. Okay. So it seems to me like this is a case where I can do basically anything I want with these cards. And weirdly, in my case, none of it's going to help, because none of those cards are strong enough in attack to beat a 3000. So he's playing, the AI is playing the exact same deck, it seems, and it really does just feel like they got lucky, and I got incredibly unlucky myself. So we'll give it a second try, but I do have to say there's nothing interesting about this deck. There's no extra cards at all. Let's see. I guess you just summon this. Maybe I could have put that on the field spell first. Yeah, that didn't feel like that was the right move. Let's see, once per turn, if it's special summoned, all the monsters you currently control get 500. I guess personally, it's fair to say I kind of hate this theme of just moving characters in and out. I hate the mechanic, but I also just generally hate the theme of sports players. Just don't think it's adding much to Yu-Gi-Oh, which is more traditionally about Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, magical fantasy things, not sci-fi things. You occasionally see some sci-fi things, but a lot of times when you do see sci-fi things, they are also elements that are on top of fantasy. So you'll have a robot, but the robot will also be from some kind of samurai world. Or you'll have a dragon, but it will have some mechanical element to it. And you definitely can't get into any real deep story here, like what's really going on with these ultra athlete competitions, if there was some kind of secret backstory to it. And for a solo mode mission, it is kind of weird that a lot of these solo modes are super simplistic. They definitely come off as what would have been written in a short press release announcing a new throwaway expansion for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game that basically would have been a gap filler. Okay, so since that didn't work 2 times, and since I rambled on too much earlier, let's just play Zodiac Troy Brigade and take what is a somewhat modern meta deck that would actually succeed quite a bit, and even to this day actually succeeds quite a bit, and see what how it compares to the standard solo mode deck that they're offering here. You basically don't have to put any thought into this deck, or I don't, because I've played it so much, and there's really nothing super special that could be done with it. They would make it especially advantageous over the UA cards. And go ahead and set that trap. I could activate this, toss this, and do some more stuff, but I think I'll just save some options for next turn. I often make the mistake of playing all my cards in one turn, and then one board clear ruins everything for me. Ash Blossom is very useful against countering almost anything, so that works for that. Zodiac Trident is very useful about destroying any face-up cards. So that worked. Harpy's Feather Duster can protect us against whatever this might be. Let's see. Now, it's all going to come down to just moving forward on these cycles. Potentially here we will have a one-turn victory. Yeah, I think I played out of order there. I should have activated the trap before summoning this, then I would have had a third spot to summon a 3 instead of summoning a 2. That may not matter too much, because I can just do it now, can't I? And what do we want to get rid of now? 3, 1. So do we have 8,000 at this point? We have 69,000 with that, and then that would be, yeah, 88,000 with that. So we have our 1-turn kill for the Zodiac Tri-Brigade by playing it. And arguably I'm playing this deck a little bit better than I have in the past. Like this card, Access Code Talker in particular, I didn't realize it's a valuable addition it offered. So I'd often ignore it and not play it. But yeah, that's a great example where a good meta deck can just kind of counter almost anything. In this case, it countered about 3 activations of an effect and left me open to just play my gimmick for a 1-turn kill, which really has nothing to do with the UA story. You have a boxer made out of boxes, which is funny, certainly, as like a pun in the gimmick. Although, questionably, is Yu-Gi-Oh! Supposed to be funny? Like, can you really make a trading card game that was all about jokes and puns? I suppose you could, but I would question if people would want to stick with it when you're not taking it serious, ever. I think some things could be silly, but you'd almost have to make an occasional expansion that was silly, not the whole game. So in this case, I guess we'll give it a chance with a different deck. This, I assume, would be a little bit more complicated of a deck. Noticeably here there are actual fusion monsters and XYZ monsters and link monsters in the extras deck, where there was none of that before. Which, if there are XYZ and link summon monsters, that would imply that either this deck, this loner deck, was designed later, or there is something to a higher strategy with the UA cards. But for the sake of time, I will just play probably once here and then move on and use my Zodiac Tri-Brigade again. Okay. So, don't want to activate that effect. This could work to gain attack. Or which of these would be better? Banish one warrior monster from your graveyard to send another one to the graveyard. So it feels like something here might benefit from being in the graveyard, but I am not sure what it is. So I could get 3 monsters with 3 different names. Let's just do with a traditional Blackluster soldier here. That was probably a mistake to do that, but for the first turn, since you can't attack, having a 3000 attack monster with a bunch of effects on it could work fairly well. Now, noticeably here, Blackluster Soldier, what is this one? Soldier of Chaos, probably is its name. Not really in the UA theme. And you'd think it would be strong enough to not be taken down, but I guess I would be wrong about that. Pulled the card out of my graveyard to destroy Blackluster Soldier. Interesting. It definitely feels like this deck that the opponent is playing is more feasible. So I might have a little bit more of a struggle with the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck to defeat this. But far too much of Yu-Gi-Oh! Really does just boil down to this, where it's just summon, 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 activate effect, have 20 different things happen. That was my last chance, so we'll lose here. Go ahead and let the computer finish us off. Two years into Yu-Gi-Oh! And my enthusiasm for it is definitely not any higher. I'm not hating the game by any means, but I definitely am not spending extra time or extra energy to do extra gameplay. I can get up to Platinum 3 or even Platinum 2 fairly often, but I can't get in the ranked high enough because I'm just any higher than Platinum, because I just don't have enough interest in playing the game that often. So I am very much sticking to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday live streams of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is it. It would be kind of hard, though, to choose to play some other kind of collectible card game instead of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the top 3 games, the other 2 being Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. But there is a small possibility I could see of That's not what I wanted to do. You could see moving to, say, play Sudoku games instead while live streaming and talking about video game news. Because that is an even slower process. And there is no time limit on Sudoku games, nor is there an opponent challenging you, so you're not irritating some other player. I'm gonna fake him out and pretend like that's a trap card. So that certainly is a thought that's crossed my mind as far as doing something really slow, like a jigsaw puzzle, or probably not a jigsaw puzzle, but crossword puzzle, Sudoku, instead of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As a warm-up. But I really would, at that case, probably only try to solve one Sudoku puzzle per live stream. Let's go ahead and activate this now. Oh, that didn't go well. Question here is going to come down to, can he trigger something amazing, or am I relatively safe? You have 2, 3 cards here. Maybe I can trigger that. This. Now, this guy will let me toss this from my graveyard to destroy this. And for safety, I can toss this, keep destroying that. Which isn't going to get me a full 1-turn kill. I don't believe, but it will get me very close. Unfortunately, the CPU opponents here, probably should stop calling them AI, since there almost certainly is no real intelligence there, don't really have the programming to surrender, so this will take another turn. And frankly, this is a weird enough deck that I wouldn't be surprised if he could do quite a bit there. Just go ahead and activate this right now and see if that clears the field. So yeah, we're learning very little here. Other than that the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck still is very successful, and these UA cards could be helpful. Weird that they've updated this now. A ticket that allows you to purchase a legacy pack. What will your legacy be? And then this ticket allows you to purchase eligible packs. Please check the eligible card pack screen at the shop. Feels like there probably should be a button there to jump you to the shop immediately. So one more super difficult 5-star version of a UA deck, and we'll give it a chance, but odds of me succeeding are pretty low considering I have not succeeded with any of the other UA decks. It would be nice if you could have a card game that some players were really good at playing very complicated versions of decks, and some players could beat even the most complicated versions of decks by just being very good at playing simple decks, but I just don't see a way you could do that. It's just something this. That's not a UA card, this is a UA card. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here, but it does seem like the deck has shifted quite a bit now to Warrock Fortia, Warrock cards in general. Which this is an example of where a story might be interesting, is if all of a sudden this high-tech sci-fi universe was attacked by a different group of people who are very much low-tech warriors. That would be an interesting crossover concept. Barbarians, effectively. And while you can see that in deck building and cards, you can get weird synergies that might be better than the original synergies of a single theme. I haven't seen any of the solo modes actually try to tell those stories, or generally just try to tell an interesting story at all. Most of the time there's just no twists or turns to the narrative, so it's all just easily guessed. If we summon the UA monster, we'll summon this one first. See what we can special summon. $2,100, $1,900. Okay, I'm gonna do this. There is an effect clearly here that you're pulling cards out of your deck, which is potentially going to give you more options, but not good enough options here. I'm still 21 attack versus 25 attack. And the cards that have the animations are supposed to be fairly good cards, strong cards, but it doesn't tend to really mean in much of anything. And yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like I'm building up to any real strategy here. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure you should play all the fields fails first. And that's not better. Guess I'll special summon something stronger. Okay. I don't think I can do anything else. See if this works here as a concept. One of the things I've done though is, nope, it's not pointing to the right. I've changed the settings where I have, let's see, card position auto enabled, and anytime you play a card that's talking about pointing to a specific card, you really can't have auto position enabled turned on. There is just slight advantages by choosing where you're going to put the cards, and it definitely slows down the process a little bit by not just having it automatically place cards, but that slight advantage is worth it. Even a really small advantage is almost always worth it, particularly when you're playing ranked against other people, since effectively anybody could have the same cards as you. Let's see, is there anything else that's possibly worth summoning? We'll try Blackluster Soldier again. That's not worth summoning. Definitely can get very irritating though when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! That you activate an effect and it just triggers your opponent's effects, particularly if they have super long chains of effects. So you attack and then all of a sudden they're activating 5 cards and completely turning the tables on you. Of course, it's also very irritating when your opponent just has the ability to activate an effect and then just decides to sit there and take up several seconds of playtime deciding whether or not they're going to activate the effect. And so you're just sitting there watching the red glow, waiting for your opponent to play. Inherently, I think modern card games are eventually going to have to move to speculative card games instead. In the case where instead of waiting for your opponent to actually play, an AI just plays for them, and that way the game has just considerably less wait time. Although at a certain level, maybe player versus player in general should just go away, and speculative playing against an AI pretending to be a human being is really getting rid of player versus player. We should win this turn. Let's see if this works. Exact amount. Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure what I really learned there. Not really much about the UA cards or the rock cards, rock warrior cards. I suppose it did show me that I can win with the loner decks, but I kind of knew that already. So I will just off screen play these with the loner deck, and I may struggle with this loner deck more than I struggle with this one. And yeah, as far as story goes, we're going to watch this final story and get this trap card, and then with almost 100% certainty, I will never play any of those cards ever again in my life. Which highlights the kind of pointlessness of solo mode. There's just not a lot here, particularly when they're giving you this shorter layout where it's just a scenario story, a practice game. In this case, the practice game really not teaching you much. A single duel that you have to do, and then the goal, and then if you have these secondary currencies, which you should have more than enough of these secondary currencies, you can unlock more difficult duels, or you can just ignore them and go to the goal and wrap up the story. Let's see. The biggest problem here is you're not even laying down the foundation for wanting more in the narrative. This is the kind of story that if you're going to tell it properly, you would introduce some young loser kid, your Yugi type character in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, who starts off very slowly and with very weak abilities, just like Yugi, and then you follow that protagonist character on his journey to be the very best. Maybe Ash Ketchum is a great example of that too, although Ash Ketchum took forever to finally win all of the badges he was going for. But yeah, you follow one protagonist through a journey of going up the ranks in playing sports. You don't just introduce nameless heroes who are already perfect. Anyways, the story says many people hunger for the prestige of ultra athletics, but only a select few have ever made it, and even fewer ever rise to become the cream of the crop, the ones who get to claim the fame and the riches. And to survive in this harsh world, they must undergo training every day to keep their physical abilities in shape. These ultra athletes must also possess one other thing: an excellent sense of teamwork. Well, the idea of teamwork isn't super emphasized in the story, but I guess it is in the card plays. Looking at this, it almost makes it seem like the ultra athletes don't actually play anything like sports as we'd recognize it, but instead play one sport amongst all of them and are just wearing costumes that imply other sports, which that would be weird. It would be interesting, I suppose, in a sci-fi story if there was a single sport where sometimes the ball, the hologram ball, turned into a basketball, and then you were playing basketball, and then all of a sudden it would shift to football, and then you're playing American football. Then it would like shift to soccer, and then you're playing soccer. So you just had to be on your toes because it would randomize into different sports. That'd be an interesting twist, at least in a sci-fi sense. It'd probably make for a terrible game to watch and try and understand what's happening. To claim win after win, they must rise together in a unified force, work together to solve any problems quickly. Now, notably here, the story here is they don't care how much it makes sense, because you really can't have an excellent sense of teamwork when you're in a world where only a few players rise to the cream of the crop. Talented players with excellent cooperative skills are highly sought after and will often receive offers from dozens of teams. And when word gets out that a certain athlete is moving to another team, boy, do the fans love that sort of gossip. This is a really terrible way to animate somebody. It's just to have no eyes there. They should have put some glasses over the guy, shades over the guy to hide that they couldn't draw eyes, or put a visor over the guy. This is the sports guy. This is just like a manager guy. But yeah, you could have done a sci-fi visor to hide you can't draw eyeballs. The drawings in these solo modes, not very good still. Although in all fairness, not a lot of people are spending a lot of time playing the solo modes. There's no reason to. For both the UAs and their supporters, what happens off the field or the court is just as entertaining as what happens on it. To the athletes, there is no greater interesting spot to just end the story here, or end the sentence. Moment of joy and exhilaration than when they're presented with their prize and glory, basking in the cheers of the crowd. It is for this one moment that they work themselves to the bone day after day. With this great popularity, the UAs have seen the worlds of professional sports as beginning to see more expansion and growth. This definitely feels like a story written by somebody who is overly dramatizing sports, potentially to the point where they just have no real experience with sports themselves, or really are painting a major fictional interpretation of it, propagandizing it, frankly. To accommodate more audience members and types of sports, and to escalate the entertainment value further, the stadium was renovated to be usable under any weather condition. Plus, there has also been word of motor racing debuting as the next exciting sport. There's no doubt that The Ultra Athletes will go on to captivate even more spectators and take things to a greater, never before seen heights. Now, it's worth pointing out that in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series, particularly the first one, Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game becomes so popular and is just said to have been so popular even from the first episode that it has practically pushed every single other kind of entertainment out of the minds of every person on the planet. People in that first season in particular of Yu-Gi-Oh! Only played Yu-Gi-Oh! And the filler episodes with like Dungeon Dice Monsters were A, not well received by the audience of people watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, but B, also not really well received by the characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe. But yeah. So you have this weird contrast in this story in that it is just not in line with any of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series. Every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series, they always play Yu-Gi-Oh! Every episode once. It's very often to solve some type of conflict or have some kind of challenge. Nobody introduces an idea of any kind of other sports or competition. Which, yeah. Even in the racing Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series where it is playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And racing, it's still very much playing Yu-Gi-Oh! First and foremost. There is an unhealthy obsession of Yu-Gi-Oh! In these universes by far, because the cartoons are literally just starting the commercials for playing the card game. And I guess there is also something to be said about how there probably isn't enough protections even to this date as far as making cartoons that are effectively just commercials to a video game, or to a card game in this case. And the idea of them introducing racing maybe implies that this is maybe a prequel story to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series where they are racing and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At the same time. But none of these sports had them playing Yu-Gi-Oh! While also doing their sports. So we unlocked a secret pack and we'll see. Take a look at this. Tournament athletes. It's featured cards. Select how many of these I already have. There's a decent amount of ultra rares and super rares I don't have. And I could see definitely buying this because I'm missing quite a lot of normals and rares. Also, though, I'm low on gems, so it's kind of a bad choice. Particularly when you know none of these cards are things I'd ever play with. Notably, these expansions don't really work because you need at least 5 of the super rares and ultra rares to have a synergy that makes sense. I couldn't make a Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck if I had only one of the Zodiac cards or one of the Tri-Brigade cards. You need... yeah. So you're heavily likely in these secret packs, which also only really give you 4 cards from this featured card section, and then give you 4 cards out of the much larger Master Duel pack. It's just number hasn't really gone up as much as I thought it would have in 2 years. So yeah, inherently, if I was to buy 10 packs, there's a danger that I wouldn't get a Master Duel, an ultra rare card. And if I don't get an ultra rare card, then it effectively forces you to spend another 1,000 gems, buy another 10 packs to get that ultra rare card. And yeah, that's just a little too risky for me. So I'm gonna opt to say no to that. Yeah. And overall, we've spent almost an hour and 30 minutes to do one single story, which cleared this little gate symbol off of this one, but didn't actually unlock anything new if there was yet another new solo mode to be done. And yeah, there's quite a few of these solo modes that I still have yet to succeed on as far as getting all of the clear conditions, so they are labeled as complete. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this recording though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.